So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Awaken to Purpose podcast. I have a very incredible guest today, Dr. Chemene Henry, who is passionate about helping people break through where they are in order for them to see the best in themselves. She believes that ownership is a complete circle. Whatever starts with you ends with you. Therefore, she works to integrate life's learnings with the outlook for people to discover their creativity to do something special. Dr. Chemene has a servant's heart, believes in giving back to her community and helping the next generation succeed. She believes that the journey is not a straight road. It's the curves in the road, as well as the closed doors that make you a stronger and more determined individual. Dr. Chemene lives in the East Bay with her husband and is an active member of her church and a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Welcome, 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 Dr. Chemene.
Thank you, Dr. Brunel.
So glad you heard the ski-wee, right?
Yes, I heard the ski-wee.
Yes, I had to hit you up on that. That was not a part of your bio, but I did have to put that in there anyway.
All good. All good. I did it the other day in the airport when I saw Sora. So.
Listen, my ears are tuned to the ski-wee. I must say, I was on a campus with over 40,000 students, and a soror ski-weed me. And I think I could have had whiplash. I turned around so fast. My daughter was just like, I said, that's a soror. She's calling me. Somebody's calling me. So yes, anyway, I digress. Thank you so much, Dr. Chemene, for joining us today. I'm so excited to have you here on the podcast. We talked a little bit about beforehand, kind of like what the podcast is about. And the reason why I invite people on to share their incredible stories of their life's journey and how those things have kind of like brought them to the place where they are today and the impact that they're making in their lives and the lives of others. And so I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to you so you can go ahead and share your story with the listeners.
Well, thank you so much. I think that probably one of my biggest things was finding love after 40. I had always been someone that had, thought I would be married by 23, thought I'd have my 2 kids or 3 kids and the house and the white picket fence and everything. And 23 happened and 25 happened and 29 happened and 30 and on up happened. And although I dated a lot and I did a lot of online dating and internet dating, I never found that love, that person that loved me for me and all that is what you see before you is Dr. Chemene Henry. And it's a lot. It really is a lot. And so I remember my really, really dear friend of mine, we were working together at work one day, and I remember sitting in her cubicle and I'm like, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I find anyone? And she's like, nothing, let's figure something out. Maybe, I said, I don't want you to have I don't want to do blind dates, because then that's always awkward. I said, but if you guys had an event or a party, because her husband was really, he was a social butterfly and knew a lot of people. And he was also an man of Alpha Phi Alpha. I said, maybe if you guys have an event and we just show up, if sparks fly, if they don't, it's cool. It's not awkward. And so she's like, okay, no problem and everything. Well, fast forward, my sister and I went to go visit my grandmother in 2012 and to take some time with her to give my aunt a rest. And my grandmother and I always had this running joke that she wanted some of my cake and meant my wedding cake. And so one day my grandmother and I were sitting in the house and she says, I want some cake. And I called my grandmother Gaga and I was like, Gaga, there's no cake in the house, but I can make you one. And she's like, no, I want some of your wedding cake. And I literally looked at her and said, you and me both, Gaga, but I'm not dating anyone now. So I'm not sure when that's going to happen, kind of jokingly. And she's like, okay. And she didn't say anything. Literally a week later, I met the man that would become my husband, but I did not know it then. Okay. A week later. And so fast forward to that, my husband and I met at a church event. My friends who I worked with they were involved as at a church, and they were doing a kind of back to school, young adult, career, college program. And they asked me to come speak on behalf of Howard. I'm a Howard alum grad, woo-hoo, proud class of 1994. And it's you. And also speak on behalf of AKA. And so I said, sure, no problem. And so when we went there and we were talking and stuff, and I first met my husband, whose name is Michael, I thought it was nice. It was like no sparks were flying or anything like that. It wasn't like, oh, I love at first sight. It wasn't anything like that. Mm-hmm. I was interested in someone else, and he was actually dating someone else at the event.
Okay.
And so, we did the event and everything like that. And I liked his energy and stuff. He was afraid to say my last name because my maiden name at the time was Hooker, and people are always afraid to say my last name. They can't quite pronounce my first name, Chemene, but then they're afraid to say Hooker. And I'm like, look, I've been a hooker this long.
It's so funny. Okay.
Just liked his energy and stuff. And so about a couple of weeks later, this was October, all in October 2012, a couple of weeks later, his really good friend, who's also a friend of mine, sends me a text, and she was like, hey, you remember Michael? And I was like, well, yeah, what about him? I thought something had happened because, she's like, you're single and he's single. And I'm like, he's single? Isn't he dating XYZ? No, they decided to be friends. I think you guys should be friends and go get coffee. And I was like, sure, I'm always down for getting to know somebody and just engaging in male conversation because it's different than your girlfriends.
Yes, it is.
And, excuse me, to have that male perspective. So I was like, sure, no problem. And so we became Facebook friends, and we started liking each other's posts or what have you and everything. And so then now we're moving into November, December. Mm-hmm. And so my best friend gets married. I'm emotional. The guy that I'm interested in is not trying to be dealt with me. He's on to doing something else. And so New Year's Eve, I was really, really just down and depressed. My girlfriend just had this true, beautiful Cinderella fairy tale wedding. And so New Year's Eve, my friend Annette tells me, come to our house. We're going to have a New Year's Eve party. Do you want us to invite Michael? You can invite him. And I was like, no, you guys invite him. It's not my house. You invite him. Well, right. He couldn't come, but they're like, oh, we have somebody else coming too. And you never know. And I'm like, always down. I was like, I told myself for 2013, I was not Mr. Right wasn't going to come knocking on my door. I had to put myself out there.
How old
are
you?
I am 13. 40, 2012. I was 42.
Okay.
I was 42.
Mm-hmm.
I told myself Mr. Right wasn't going to come knocking at my door.
Okay.
I had to at least go out to where Mr. Right might be, that he wasn't going to come knocking here she is. Mm-hmm. So I'm now 42. And so come to find out, Michael had told me later that New Year's Eve that year, New Year's Eve 2012, he had told his friend, next year, 2013, I'm going to find my queen. I'm going to go out and I'm going to find her. I'm not going to be home. I'm going to find the woman I'm supposed to marry. I didn't know this at the time. So New Year's Eve happens, everything. Michael and I had already set up to go out on a date January 1st.
Mm-hmm.
So January 1st, we do lunch date because it's not quite breakfast. It's not quite dinner, which is usually more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
We figured lunch. He had just told me he was starting a job. So it's right, we could go Dutch. It's no big deal. This is 2013. It's no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So we go and we meet, and the first we go see Django of all movies.
Wow. Okay. That was an interesting date. Okay.
Right. We go to lunch, have a good time and everything. Well, Michael and I have a huge age gap and an age difference. There's 16 years between us.
Did you know this at the time you guys had set up time to go out?
I knew that he was younger. I didn't realize he was 20 at the time. I think he was 25, 26. Mm-hmm. When we first started when we went out on our first date, which is a generation and a half. When you think about it, I'm a 70s baby. I graduated in 1988 from high school. He's born in 1986, just to put it in comparison.
Jesus. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for putting that in context for everyone. Okay.
So, we went out to dinner, we went out to lunch, we saw the movie, good time and everything. So, the evening's ending, walks me to my car, and I get ready to kiss him. Well, it's a joke now, but he actually turned his cheek and gave me his cheek. And I was just like, I was offended,
Okay,
thinking, I felt some vibes. I thought it was a good match. And so then later on we go home and, my girlfriend's like, how was it? I was like, it was nice. We had a good time, good conversation. And so he texts me later and he's like, you're out of your league. You're at the time I was in my doctoral program. You're getting your PhD. You've lived in a couple different states. You've had all this experience, your age, you're out of my league. And I just feel like it's not, where I'm not at your level. And I was like, okay, no big deal. It's all good. We can still be friends. We have a lot of mutual friends. And I don't want it to be awkward with us because we do have a lot of mutual friends and we would see each other on more than one occasion. Well, fast forward that week, we had been texting each other and everything like that. And so at the time he had his own business as photography. So now we're on to Saturday of the same week of the first week of the year of 2013. And that Saturday, he had sold his biggest client, his largest, at the time, wedding package. And he was so excited. And so he called me to share it with me. And I was like, oh, that's great. We should go out to celebrate. He's like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm going to go grab something to eat. He's like, you want company? Sure. No big deal. We go grab something. We went to Chinese food, like literally down the street from where I used to live, where we ended up used to living. And after that date, everything changed. There was no more pre-first date jitters. There was no more oh my gosh, he had kind of gone through his head, all the other people you'd been with, nothing else worked out. Try something different. You just never know and everything. And from that moment on, he was the only man I dated in 2013.
I have a question.
Sure.
I probably have 10 questions. And this is mainly, I think, probably for the audience and listening. What mental hurdles, if any, did you have to overcome to be open to the idea of dating someone who was 16 years younger than you?
I think for me, my biggest hurdles that I had to go through was maturity, financial stability, where they were, and they might not be where they were, but are they willing to grow to where they needed to be? Because I understand, you're coming to the table, and even us coming to the table in our 30s, 40s, and 50s, we may not be where we are financially. We may not be, in that non-debt situation or that low debt situation that we need to be. But are they willing to work, or are they so unyielding that they're like, no, I just want to stay here? Are they willing to experience and explore new things? Michael will always say, I upgraded his cheese and his wine because he never drank wine. And he was like, cheese, craft singles that came out the wrapper. Now it's gourmet cheese. Of course, this is before my husband turned vegan, but that's a whole nother conversation. But he'd always say, I upgraded his cheese and his wine. But he was open to explore. And he was open to new things, and he wasn't so stuck in his ways. And I think that was probably one of our bigger hurdles.
That sounds more like him than more so kind of like you. I think I'm trying to tap into, because there's probably people who are listening and wondering or wanting to date someone who is younger, but we're oftentimes conditioned to date same age, older as women, whereas men can dip down and do something very similar. And not to say that we can't do it, but sometimes there's a blockage for some people to kind of do that. What advice would you even give someone to be open to that?
I would say be open. If you've tried everything else, if you've always dated older, or you've always dated your same age, and you still haven't found happiness, why not try somebody younger? What do you have to lose? Going out for a date for coffee is not meaning you have to be married next week, Tuesday. You're just going out to engage, and you never know what that person brings to the table. You never know what joy or things like silliness, like you might have loved to do roller coasters, but society tells you, you're 40, you can't go on roller coasters anymore. You have to be responsible. But yet the person you're dating is 25. It's like, woohoo, I love roller coasters. Let's go ice skating or what have you. And it brings out that joyfulness and youthfulness to you. So I would say, don't be afraid of what you think in society, because at the end of the day, it is about you and that person. It's you and that person's relationship. One of the things, there were some deal breakers that we had. They had to have a relationship with God. They had to know God. They had to have a relationship. Now, do they need to be, Bible belting, thumping the whole nine, or are they growing in their relationship? They needed to be somewhere in that realm. They needed to understand that I was a Christian, and that he needed to understand I was a Christian and I only believe in one God. I understand that other people worship others, but here was for me. One of the big things for us, I think our hurdles as we got engaged, because we got engaged 4 months after we got started dating. We got engaged actually in April of 2013. We were engaged longer than we had dated, and we got married in 2014. So we're getting ready to celebrate 8 years next month. 8 wonderful years. Next month was, his family had a lot of divorces in his family. And so that was huge for me. My parents, before my dad passed, had been happily married for 53 years. And so for his whole family, and I mean whole family, with the exception of one family member at the time, had all been divorced. It was important for us to go through premarital counseling. It was important for us to understand the what he believed for marriage, whether or not divorce, I always say divorce is not an option. And he always says, but it is an option. It's not an option we're choosing to look at, but it is an option. It was important for us to understand that we are coming from different places, different generations, different experiences, and what we needed to do to bring together as a whole for a family. I would probably say my dad and mom had the bigger hurdle of getting over the age differences, because he was so much younger than his family did. But just kind of talking to him, but primarily too, I never really brought people home to my parents, being the baby, being the, to come to meet my parents, you had to be really, really, really special, because my father was like that. I always picture, he was like that bald eagle sitting up on that perch that protected his family. So you didn't break through that easily. So you just didn't bring everyone home. And, you have to look at my sister who's been with her husband now 30 years. So he's been a part of the family, about as long as my husband has been alive. And so I'd say for me, I had to really go through, like, what is it that I want? I've tried all this other stuff. I've tried to date older. I've tried to date younger. They didn't really love me for me, but loved me for what I could give them. And with Michael, it was just different. Like it wasn't about what I could, buy. And, there'd be times where I'm like, nope, I'm not going to go my own ways. Like I really had to tell myself to do differently than I had in the past, because I was a fixer. You had an issue or problem, I would fix it. I would throw money at it. I would fix it. And so I would also say that I truly worked on me in between my last guy that I saw, dated, whatever you want to call it, to meeting Michael. I worked on me and who I was and what I needed to do to be able to fully come to the table as a better person whole, needing to what I could have that person added to me. I never believed that a man completed you. I believe that you come to the table whole and they add to your completion, but they don't necessarily complete you. Yeah. And then one of the other things we did, we went through 2 different sets of premarital counseling. We went through marital counseling with my pastor for about 6 weeks. And we went through marital counseling with his pastor and first lady at the time, because one, I wanted to know what his doctrine was and what he believed and how he was being taught. But two, also to get an idea, because I'm a firm believer that you need to be under the same house. When you're worshiping, you can't be under two. For me personally, again, you can't be under two different houses, because your pastor might, and first, they might be telling you something else that you're like, hey, wait a minute, that's not what I'm in agreement with or what it says, or and so when it came time, so when it came time for us to find a new church home for us as a married couple, we spent time at his church, we spent time at my old church, and then we made a decision to go to find another church to where we could grow as a couple together and not be in that, oh, we're just going to add Chemene and stir, or add Michael and stir and this, and you'll be able to do all of this. And so it's been great. We have relationships with our former pastors and our former churches still to this day. But where we are now, we have grown tremendously as a couple.
So let's talk about also, because I know I remember when you were dating Michael, and I remember I asked you the question. I was like, Chemene, did you pray about this? And is this the man that God, called you to? And you told me yes. And then I just was like, well, then let it be as you say, right? Talk to me a little bit more about that. Like, what were you praying about concerning Michael when you decided to go to coffee, when you felt like, okay, this could potentially be something? What did you see God about?
I sought God to send me the man that would love me for all that is me. And I say it that way because I always thought I was high maintenance. I'd always be like, I'm high maintenance. Now I like some things.
You're high energy.
I'm high energy.
You're high energy. I don't know if that means high maintenance, but it's just high energy. It's like you always bring a lot of yourself, a lot of love, like you're very giving. And to some people, right? So I never saw it as like, oh my gosh, she's high maintenance. I just like high energy, high, like high achiever, high impact, loves hard, plays harder, right? So, I always seen you as that type of person.
Well, I definitely love hard. But in my mind, I was always high maintenance because I'd always be like, oh, I'm going to buy this. I'm going to shop this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And so I wanted somebody that just loved me for me, in that raw, vulnerable, no makeup on, haven't had that, at the time, creamy crack, that perm done, and your hair's all looking crazy, ups and downs when it's that time of the month. I prayed for that person to be there and love me for all through kind of like through all the makeup and through all the filters. I really prayed for someone that, that was similar in nature to my dad, that provider, that carer, that, that lover, that friend, that, that would always be there for you, and a kind heart. I prayed somebody for a servant's heart that loved God and loved his people. I prayed for, someone that would still allow me to grow and not feel jealous or intimidated, and understand, because you have to understand, and people don't, as I come to you with a lot of worlds. I come to you with all that is me. I come to you with, here's my education world. And as, a doctor in psychology, I come to you as a active and financial member of Alpha Kappa Alpha, and all that is, whether it's conferences, whether it's my sorority sisters, whether it's, we got to do this, I got dues, I got this. I come to you with, my family and all that is. And my family is a lot. We have marathon family time when we're together, 4 or 5 days on. We just spent 8 days in Cancun with my cousin for her wedding. With all my family. It was 90 of us at a destination wedding. So I come to you with a lot, and I prayed for that. And I prayed for somebody that had range. I always said, I want you to be like a Barack Obama. I want you to be able to be okay at the barbecue, hanging it out, whether you're playing basketball or dominoes or not, or playing with the kids, but also okay in a tuxedo for when I'm at a black tie event for AKA, and you're okay to have a conversation without me having to be there on your arm. I need you to be able to facilitate that conversation. I don't need you to be a scholar. I don't need you to be, to be able to cite the thesaurus, but I need you to be able to hold your own and have that conversation with individuals, whether you're talking about the weather, sports, or what have you. So have that range to where, yeah, you could kick it, but you're also comfortable in a black tie and no, you're not going to just be sitting in a corner like,
listen,
is it time to go?
Yeah.
I'm bored. I don't want this, because that's real to me.
You're comfortable in your own skin and comfortable with the man that you are. Yes. I love that. So listen here. I mean, I'm so moved by that, because I think sometimes when we're praying for to be married, that sometimes it's really some surface things that we start to pray to God about, instead of really knowing who you are and what's going to work well for you, and then how you can also serve him. Yep. Right. And so it's not just about this exhaustive laundry list, but like, Father, someone who I am truly equally yoked with. Right. And so that's essentially what you're saying, is that you can be comfortable whether you're in this setting or that setting, because if you are like highly engaged in a lot of different things, yes, you want someone who's not going to sit by the sidelines and just say, okay, well, yeah, you go to that event by yourself. Nobody wants to get married to go to things by themselves.
which I had prior to dating him. I literally dated somebody who was like, you never get dressed up for me. And I'm like, we never go anywhere. Listen. So when I had sorority events, and I'd have, at the time I was in a chapter that did debutante ball every year, because I was in the Sacramento chapter. We'd go to debutante. You never dressed up. You don't want to go. I'm not going to sit at home and do nothing that we do all the time because you don't want to go. And then that's why I was like, and at that time, God gave me some serious signs that this person wasn't who I needed it to be, who was supposed to be for me. And I ignored him. And first that sign is subtle. Then that second sign might be a little louder. Then that third sign is like, oh, you're straight ignoring me. I'm going to make this big and I'm going to make this one hurt. Finally, I was like, I hear you, God, I'm good. Deuces. Like, because after a while, you're like, oh, yeah.
We've all been there, have we not? I think we've all, this is just a part of life, is that some people come in and out of your life, and is being able to discern those who are from God and those who are not from God. So yes, I'm going to add to that. I've dated my fair share of jokers as well. So I just call them that. So one of the things that you kind of touched upon is, you said you and Michael have been married for 8 years, and then you had a little stipulation in there. You kind of said, 8 wonderful years. So talk to me a little bit about what's been so wonderful for you. And the only reason I'm asking that is sometimes I think I've had some guests who have talked about marriage, and they've talked about the sacrifices. Of course, we all have to make sacrifices, compromises, and things of that nature. But I loved how you just kind of added that it's been wonderful. It's been beautiful. And so talk to us a little bit about what has been so beautiful for you and Michael.
It's been, we grow together. We grow separately, but we're also growing together. We've grown in our relationship with God, definitely. We have grown in our faith and what we've done. We've grown in our finances, tremendously. We've grown to where I've actually had to step back and let him lead us, because I was so strong and still am a strong person, and I'm so used to doing everything, that to learn to, however words we want to use, submit, obey, and let that person lead, which is hard. And I did not say obey it when I got married. It but I've had to submit my spouse. Like, he is the head of our house. And I've had to really learn, yes, there is that covering. There's God above us. He is under God. I am underneath him. One of the biggest things was when my dad, I lost my dad and my grandmother within a 6-month period. And that was the hardest time in my life. I am a daddy's girl. My dad got sick and it was unexpectedly. My grandmother, we expected, my grandmother lived to be 96. She was there at our wedding to get her cake. She was happy. She was the first person in line to get her cake once Michael and I cut our cake. And so I will always cherish that. And then my grandmother got sick in February. My dad got sick in April. My dad passed away in September. So he was there and he didn't have the length of time like my brother-in-law did to spend and get to know my dad, as my brother-in-law has been with us for so long. But he just to watch their relationship and watch them grow and know that I would be okay. We've grown. This is hard to talk about. We went through some major infertility issues. And I am not able to bear kids. And that was a huge toll on us, both emotionally, separately and together. What that meant, prior to getting married and dating Michael, I became okay with I might never be a mom. Because when I hit 40, your clocks are ticking a lot faster. And I had always told my doctor, I don't want to just have kids without a husband. I want it all. I know I can do it by myself, but that's not what I want. And so based off of the conversations with my doctor, I made decisions accordingly. Well, when I got married, we tried for years to have kids and I was unsuccessful to be able to have kids, and the infertility is real. And so the emotional distress and pain that you go through for infertility, and people are like, oh, you could just adopt. And it's like, will you stop saying that to me? You just, and it's not about becoming it's not about necessarily becoming a mother and adopting. It was just to go through that whole experience of pregnancy and becoming kids. And that was hard on him because in my mind, I was like, my husband's younger than I am. He could leave me. He could want to go have kids with somebody else because I can't bear him kids. So even though he has never said that, and even though he's always said, without you, I don't want it, I would only want to have kids with you. In my mind, because our mind plays tricks on us at times and saying the devil will put those seeds into you. I felt like I was not good enough and able to carry out our wishes. And so that was huge. That was huge for us. It was a huge growth period. Some months are better than others. Even to this day, and I'm in my 50s, I'm about to be 52 next week. And not being able to have kids. Now, is adoption off the table? No, not necessarily, but there's also rules with adopting when you're older, and age criteria and age bracket. I would say for us, we had to really grow, in our communication styles. One of the big things is I'm going to tell you how I feel, and I want to know right then. What your thought is right now. He very methodical. Let me think. Let me figure out. And I didn't understand that. I was like, no, you're not responding to me. I need to know. And so I had to learn that, okay, here's my thoughts, what's your initial reaction? But I know you're going to have more time to think about it. And so that was a huge learning curve early in our relationship. Huge for me. And we've gotten better. Or he might say, okay, here's what I've been thinking about. What are your thoughts? And then we'll spend time to discuss it.
I love it. First of all, everything that you just shared was so heartfelt. And I definitely think it will resonate with other people. And I just really appreciate you for just being so transparent. And I love hearing about the glows and the grows of, your marriage with Michael. And I was like, gosh, 8 years. I was thinking like, where have I been?
8 years.
8 years. And that's just beautiful. And as we begin to kind of like wrap up the conversation, it sounds like you have a lot of life lessons that you just shared. and some key takeaways. And I'll make sure that I capture some of those things in the show notes. But one of the things that I love to ask people when they're on the show is, what is one thing that you know about God that you just wish the whole world knew?
Whew. That it is in his time and not yours, no matter how much we want it to be in ours. It is in his time. And that if you really, he knows your heart. He knows who it's for you. He knows what he's going to send you. And I even to this day, I'm learning, I've always been someone that's like, God, I want the thunder. I want the trumpets. I want Chemene. This is God. Here's what I'm saying to you. And I remember saying something to someone and I said, but I wanted the trumpets. Then they said, but he gave you what you asked for. It was just in a different way that you were thinking. So being open to that and being really attuned to that discernment, because I prayed about something, set it out there, forgot all about it. And then about 6 to 8 months later, it came knocking on my door. And because it wasn't how I thought it was going to be, it really is. And it was coming through another servant of his as confirmation. So we get that confirmation. I say all this to say we get that confirmation, but we still don't believe it because in our mind, we're thinking it's like a movie and Darth Vader and Luke, I am your father. We think it's coming in a different way. And it's not always coming that way. So really listening to him, being in tune, sitting still, whether it's your meditation in the morning, whether it's your meditation in the afternoon. I try to meditate before I come into the house after a hard day at work, because I don't want my husband to have all of that negative energy of everything. I'm an HR director for 4 sites and they got issues. I'll just say it like that. And so I try to meditate in the car before I get into the house, because I don't want to bring all of into my house, into our life, into whatever we're doing for that next few hours. And really just praying about it and not being afraid to grow, not being afraid to grow, whether it's women's courses, men's courses, spending time in the Bible, doing different Bible apps, doing different, different devotionals or what have you, and not being afraid to ask. And I think at times we think we are afraid because we think like we should know this. You grew up this way, you should know this. And there's things that I just still don't understand, but you've got to be able to be comfortable to still ask.
Amen. Thank you so much, Chemene, for joining me today and for blessing the listeners with your testimony and your story. So if people are interested in connecting with you, how can they find you?
They can reach me on Instagram. I'm at, what is my Mrs. H2, the number 2U 1908. Or you can email me at Dr. Chemene, CHEMENE @gmail.com.
I love it. Thank you again so much. I'm thinking about I need to have you and Michael come on so we can all
he's
talk about it. We have to do that very soon.
We would love to. I mean, like I said, there's 16 years difference. We are a generation and a half, and
but it'll be so great. Yeah, I absolutely want to do that. So we're gonna talk about that offline. But again, thank you so much for joining me today, and I really appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Thank you.